Everything's great. Everything's
Great.
great.
Oh, good for you.
You can release your what? My computer's been sending me all kinds of weird messages today. It blocked me from doing any Cisco stuff. I mean, it's just, I'm just love these computers. Just love these Zooms as my co-chair.
We're on, Madam Chair, we're on YouTube Live.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We are here for General Government A, and our first speaker will be the Secretary of the State. But first, Representative Walker, do you have any comments?
No, just good morning, everybody, and good to see everybody here today. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. And Senator Anwar will not be here today for a personal matter. Representative Ryan is on the Health Committee. Senator Minor, do you have anything to say? I don't know if he's on.
Don't see him.
There he is.
There he is.
He's still connecting. Craig, Senator Minor, do you have any opening comments for?
Nothing other than good morning and good to see you all.
Representative France?
Morning as well, and looking forward to another day walking through the sections of the budget.
And Representative Wilson for the subcommittee chair? You're muted, Representative Wilson.
Oops.
You're still muted. There you are.
I'll get used to this yet. Thank you, Senator, and it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone today. Didn't know I was going to get asked to say anything. Okay, thank you so much.
So, Madam Secretary, we're trying something new this year to not read the opening statements. And so if you would introduce your team, and then if people have questions for the secretary, please start raising your hand.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Austin. Nice to be here, back again. I was once co-chair of this committee, so I know exactly what you're going through. I do have people here that would be able to answer questions. Attorney Ted Bromley, head of the Elections Division, Attorney Christopher Drake, who's head of the Business Services Division of our agency, and I have, I think, Tom Maiano, who is head of the IT division of my agency. And I think that's all I have on the call. Who else? Sonia. Oh, and Sonia, yes. Sonia, who's our business manager, who can answer sort of more the data questions about the actual numbers. So they are available to answer any questions you might have about the testimony that we submitted. Basically, I guess my message is the reductions that are in our budget are acceptable to us because we have been able to do a lot of streamlining of this agency mostly through technology. So we are able to bear the reductions that I saw in the budget page. So with that, I'll leave it there and see if people have questions beyond that.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. I have two questions to begin with. One, the data collaborative. Would it be better if we just moved that over to the comptroller's office and did not leave it in your office, or is there a specific reason we should leave that there?
I think the governor moved it over in the budget. That's my understanding.
You don't need it in your budget at all?
No, not at all. That was an arrangement that we talked about last year, and
Right.
that should be perfect. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then secondly, can you send us, although I don't need it right now, any CARES Act or federal dollars, not just CARES Act, but federal dollars you received that helped you out during the pandemic? So
Oh,
that we
yes.
have that.
Yeah, we have a full accounting of that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You took my number one question, so I'll go to my number two question. In light of the number of people that are able to retire, Do you have any concerns about your staffing and everything, let's say in the second year of the biennium, because you won't be affected probably this first year?
Correct. Yes, we are already involved in legacy planning, I guess I'd call it. Every division has been asked to look at their positions. At this point, yes, we are a very an older agency, shall we say. I forget what the exact number was. I'm sure Sonia could tell you of how many people are eligible to retire, but it's a very large number. So we are currently looking at all of our positions to see if we were to refill, we may be refilling with different kinds of positions. I do believe at this point, we would be able to sustain the budget as it is within those retirements, given the changes that are undergoing right now, particularly in the business services division, where we're putting in more advanced technology. We would probably need different kinds of positions, is my impression. But yes, we are very concerned about the number of retirements ahead.
And how do you know how many? Maybe Sonia can. How many people are going to be eligible for retirement in your division?
Sonia, can you answer that question?
If we can get that information to you, I'd like to give you an accurate count. We can certainly get that to you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Representative France, followed by Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Madam Secretary, to the meeting. I just have one question regarding the new cybersecurity position that you have in your budget, and I guess what specifically that individual will be responsible for, and if there's going to be any other reorganization within your department. In other words, moving people to work for this individual, or how they will interface with your department and your agency in their role.
Yes. So the position we're asking for is an extension of a position we put in place with federal dollars that were a one-time amount of money to get us through the 2020 election. And this would be probably an IT3 position that would integrate into our IT division, where we're currently slowly but surely moving to more technical positions like this one. And maybe I'll ask Tom Maiano to describe exactly what this position would do, or maybe Attorney Bromley. I don't know which of you would be the one to answer that question. Either of you. Is Tom, are you there? No, how about you, Ted?
Sure. So basically what the position would entail is a couple of things. The first is that the interaction between the elections administration and the municipalities, as well as our own state resources and services, to make sure that we are covered in terms of any type of interference from any foreign actors. That is still a real threat and problem. And also that position would be looking to sort of correct.
Sorry, Ted, I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know about anyone else, but could you speak up a little bit louder?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. So what I was saying is that the position would be first and foremost to assist the office in terms of any interference from foreign actors with regard to the election, either through municipalities or through our own computer technology, as well as to analyze and protect against any misinformation campaigns that are out there. Those are really the two big things that position would be assisting the office with.
All right, thank you for that. I guess the continuation of the position that was funded under the federal funding, is there any additional reorganization? Are there moving people around? Do you anticipate, as this area becomes a more permanent part of your agency, and I would assume potentially grows as issues arise, based on intel threats, whatever there may be out there?
I would say that we work hand in hand with BEST. A lot of our IT function is handled by that office, but we work together with them on such things as the voter registry, for example. And cybersecurity is indeed a larger and larger part of what we're being asked to do, especially with regard to working with the local communities, making sure all their connections are secure. So yes, I would anticipate this is a growing area of concern. Although with this position and the existing IT3 position that's also engaged in some of the work with the towns, I think for now that would help tremendously. Otherwise, as we have retirements in whether it's the elections division or the business services division, we're also going to have more need for IT services in general. We're moving toward much more technology in both of these areas. And so, I would anticipate that in general, our IT function will become more important.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Minor, followed by Representative Datham.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Secretary.
Good morning.
So I'm trying to remember how many new voters came to vote this year in November. Do you recall that number?
New voters. Well, overall, I would say, first of all, we had the largest registration and turnout in the history of the state. So it was a very large number. I don't know if I could tell you, you mean new voters that registered since a certain point or just the overall number? The overall number was somewhere around 2.2 million. And usually it's more like around 2.1, maybe at the top.
So if those numbers were correct, it's about 100,000 new voters.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, it's hard to determine because some people fall off the list, some people come on, but the overall number is definitely larger. There's probably a bigger number than 100,000 new voters, depending on how many fell off. Oh, wait a minute. Somebody's going to give me the number right here. Hang on. 700,000 new registrations have been recorded since 2016. As compared with in a similar period, which had been 2012 to 2016, there were 450,000. So almost double.
Thank you. And so in terms of all the associated costs for that at the municipal level, and knowing that we're going into a November election, presumably with the same pool of electors, my question is are you prepared to again assist the towns with some of their costs, assuming that there is a vote by mail option? And do you know what that would cost?
That's a very good question. Yes, we did have federal funds to cover many of those costs, much of which was expended at the local level during the 2020 election. We received both a CARES Act amount of money, which was around $5 million that had to be expended for the 2020 election. So yes, there probably will be additional costs borne by the towns. Of course, it's a municipal election. So as you know, usually the turnout is far lower. Not that that means that we still need to have the adequate number of polling places. And at this point, if we had additional voting by absentee ballot, if we're still in the pandemic, if we're still in emergency mode by November, then that would mean, yes, there would be probably some additional costs for processing of absentee ballots. We saw an increase in absentee ballots going from about 5% to about 35% in this 2020 election. But it would, I would say it's also of a much larger number of voters who actually turn out for a presidential election. We had the highest turnout in history, almost 80% of the registered voters, and a much larger number of voters, as you pointed out.
I know we're limited to 2 questions, so I'll park it there and see who else has questions, and maybe I'll come back again. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Senator Minor. Representative Datham.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Secretary Denise Merrill. You are really have been phenomenal during the 2020 election, and just wanted to thank you for your leadership
Thank you very much.
during that time. It's been a difficult time, and you've done a great job. I'm going to focus my questions because I do like where Senator Minor was going with the election stuff, but I'd like to focus my questions on the sorry, I'm not feeling great. The number of businesses that have registered in our state. I'm wondering, that's your office responsibility, right?
Yes, we register all the businesses, correct?
So my questions really are around, since the pandemic has started, have we, I understand there's a lot of change of addresses that the DECD has received for businesses. My question is, do you get in your office, if people change their corporation registration from one state to another, that would go presumably to your office, right?
I'm going to let Chris Drake answer that question because I'm not sure exactly how that all works. Chris?
Okay.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sort of depends on what the entity is trying to do. So if the entity is staying as let's say, Connecticut LLC, and all they're doing is reporting that their principal business address is now New York or Massachusetts, yes, that would get reported on our registry. Typically, that gets reported during the annual report process. So you still have a Connecticut entity, but now they're reporting that their main corporate headquarters is somewhere else. There is a rarely used process called domestication, where you can actually take the LLC and move it to another state. Once that happens, if a LLC or a corporation does that, then we treat it as though it has left the state completely and they no longer have any filing obligations. So you would see, for instance, that someone picked up an LLC and moved it from Connecticut to Florida or something, but that's not very typical. Typically, either they dissolve or they just report that the address has changed from Connecticut to some other state, but it remains a Connecticut entity.
Okay, so my question really is around, have we seen any increase in new registrations in our state as a result of COVID, or does that seem like a lot of work for an entity? I mean, I know in my experience, a lot of companies would register themselves in Delaware, for example, because their corporate rules are a little easier. But my wondering is, have we seen any changes in the amount of entities that are filing as Connecticut domiciled companies? And do we have any numbers maybe that we could compare? And you can bring it to the work group. Don't feel that you have to answer it today.
Sure.
Maybe if we have, 3 or so year trend of business registrations, both ins and outs, not net numbers, but gross numbers. I would love to see where, if we have any increases due to the pandemic. Also, I mean, I've seen anecdotally, I've talked to a lot of small women business owners who have started new businesses. They got laid off from their jobs and they've decided to start new businesses. So I'm just kind of curious, if we have, that sort of information, new registrations for companies that have moved, and then in either direction, that would be great. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll
sure.
be happy to bring that, to the work group, what we have.
Yeah.
It's a somewhat complicated question, as I know Chris would concede. And we'll bring all that to the work group.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious what the trends are. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Minor, there's no one else up. Do you have a couple more questions?
Thank you. Yes, I do. So going back to the November election and understanding that we had increases in voter registration, does your office ever look at out-of-state transfers of registration in any way?
Well, our office doesn't really look at any of that. It's all done at the local level, but we are members of something called ERIC, where we get reports from the other member states of data from their state of people, particularly death records, frankly. I mean, it's not so much transfers as, people that have died in that state. That information gets reported to us so that we can clear them off our voter rolls. I don't know, Ted, do you have any other thinking about that?
Sure. So yes, so we are a member of ERIC, which I think we're up to now around 30 states, including most recently Florida, which is great news for us, because a majority of people who move, believe it or not, move to either Florida or California from Connecticut. So we do know that. And in addition to ERIC, we also receive national change of address information from the post office. And as you probably are all aware, once a year, the registrars, the local officials conduct an annual canvass of the vote and, of their voters, using the ERIC data that we receive as well as national change of address to in an attempt to make sure that the voter list is accurate. The ERIC data that we do receive is actually four things. We receive deaths from ERIC, meaning that they're hooked up with the Social Security Administration for a death index. We receive out of state moves. We receive in-state moves. And then we also receive a file of NCOA data from the post office as well. So we get those four records, and that is what we provide to the municipalities so that they can canvass their voters every year.
Thank you. So going back to Representative Datham's question, if I think I saw what I think I saw in terms of the last year's transfers into the 30th district, there were a significant number of New York residents that bought real estate, many of whom registered to vote. And looking at the real estate transactions, I would say it began probably in April and hasn't stopped yet. Is there a point at which someone connects all the dots and tries to develop a history of data that might show whether the individuals that have acquired real estate, registered to vote, may actually be domiciled here and may actually be working out of state from a home office? Is that something your agency tracks?
No, I don't think so. Do we, Ted? I don't see, no, because again, all this is kept at the local town level. So we have the list, but we don't really do anything with the data on the list like that. That's
right. I mean, the data that we receive would be for voter registration purposes only. So obviously, if somebody is living and buys property in Connecticut, they can certainly register to vote if it's their bona fide resident. But whether or not that person is working from Connecticut or commuting into New York City or whatnot, that would not be data that we collect for voter registration purposes.
Well, I'm sorry, maybe you misunderstood. Understanding that the Secretary of State's office is kind of the collection point for a lot of business activity and is also the collection point for voter registration activity, I was wondering whether those two dots are ever connected within the office.
I would say no, because the business registrations are registered usually through agency and doesn't even necessarily have home addresses. It would have agency type addresses for the agent for service or process. It would have the address of the business itself, but we don't get into residency questions with businesses. Is that roughly correct, Chris?
Right. There's no law that would require that in order to form a business, you need to be a Connecticut resident. So like was pointed out earlier, that people register in Delaware even though they're not domiciled there. Same thing's true in Connecticut. You could register a business here, but be a resident somewhere else.
So there's really no nexus between the voter registration list and the business registry, is I guess what we're saying.
And some might argue there's no known nexus between the two, but that's okay. If we're not looking, we're certainly not going to know. It is an extraordinary phenomenon that occurred, and I think it occurred primarily because of COVID. I can tell you that the number of New York registrations in the northwest corner is significant. And in terms of 169 towns going down this path of who lives here and who doesn't, it just seemed that if there was a state agency that was at least at some level trying to connect some dots to see if that connection existed, there might be a database, a data set there that would show even to the governor, although it doesn't appear that he has even looked down this road, that there's a significant amount of income that was earned during the last year by individuals that operated out of Connecticut that we don't know anything about. And I think if the Department of Revenue Services and the Department, the Secretary of State's office maybe work together, you might be able to find out whether that's a significant number or an insignificant number. My last question, I guess, has to do with the fact that the CARES Act funds don't appear to be that they're going to be around for the November election. So understanding that there's this network of voter boxes and I would say certainly an interest in trying to vote early. Does your budget anticipate any additional assistance, to municipalities, whether it's for postage or anything else that may arise out of this kind of trend that was established last year?
No, there is nothing in our budget to do that. In the state budget, I don't know whether we'll get more funding from the federal government, but if we do, it probably wouldn't be for the local elections. So count me as somebody who thinks the state should be putting more money into elections. Absolutely. And I think we saw that in the 2020 election. For example, another thing I am asking for, which is a direct result of what you're talking about, is I have asked for some more money for, first time, by the way, that we've had any money for public education about elections. And fortunately for us, we got a separate private sector grant we spent about $2 million or so of a separate, not even the CARES Act money, but another amount of money just to inform people about the process of voting. And most of that was spent on television ads with little characters in them. We developed these to show people how to use an absentee ballot. And I think it was invaluable in showing how smoothly the election went, even under incredibly difficult circumstances. And by the way, I don't credit me with all that. I credit the local officials. It was extraordinarily difficult. But you are right to be concerned about going forward. The state should be considering taking a stronger role in funding the local operations, because they certainly needed it this last year. We have no idea where we're going to be in November, and I think it's wise to think about that.
I know we're getting to the end, but that private sector grant of $2 million, could you tell me where that came from?
How
about if you just bring it to the work group?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was
Thank
I forget the name of it, but it was what was it called? Center for Election Innovation and Research.
If you
And
could.
it was
maybe
very,
bring it to the work
yeah,
group, I'd appreciate
it
it.
was
I'll
very
let
well.
them know.
By the way, we did use some of the CARES Act money for it, but we didn't have nearly enough to do, television advertising in particular. It's very, very expensive, particularly in Fairfield County. So
Thank you very much.
I'll bring more information to the work
So-
group.
I don't want
So-
Senator Austin yelling at me.
So I do have Representative Zawistowski who will be asking the last question of the Secretary, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, I actually represent a border town where a lot of people wind up getting health care across the border in Massachusetts. Is it your office that is responsible for getting the reporting of deaths to your office, or is that strictly municipal? Because I've had a discussion with this on the municipal level as well.
Maybe I'll let Ted answer it but to be specific, the Department of Public Health keeps the ultimate records. The towns, I think, are the first stop for the death certificates. Then that's reported to DPH, and DPH is required to report to the towns on for purposes of keeping up the voter list. Is that roughly correct, Ted?
That's correct, Madam Secretary. So, right. So each town has a registrar of vital statistics. Most oftentimes it's the town clerk. Sometimes it's a separate person. But yes, all deaths are reported locally, as well as to the Department of Public Health. And then that, there's a comparison made there. But most oftentimes we find that it's the local officials that find out even before it's reported to Department of Public Health, simply because it's a local person that dies and it was reported, things of that nature. The thing that is complicating, though, is that if an individual, specifically if you're a representative in a border town, if somebody dies, let's say in Massachusetts, that death certificate oftentimes is delayed between states, and so that may be an issue there for whomever you are speaking with.
That is actually an issue because we're not getting timely notifications, and it does impact the voter rolls. We do wind up with a lot of people who are deceased on the voter rolls, and particularly in one of my towns. Is there a way that we can induce the out-of-state reporters to be able to get this information on a timely basis?
Well, each state handles their deaths a little differently, but that is precisely why the Secretary joined ERIC, because then we get the death information across multiple states. And as I say, I think we're up to over 30 states that are participating in that in a much more timely manner.
Is there a way, Tweak, that we can actually get a coordination with the town clerks or whatever town office is in a particular town handles this information? I think we need to improve the communication on it. If you're getting the information and the town clerks are not, I think there could be some improvement there.
We don't get the information directly. I think it comes directly from DPH to the towns. I think the problem is, I think Massachusetts is a member of ERIC, so you should be getting the ERIC we should be getting the ERIC information directly through that system. I think Massachusetts is a member, Ted, right? Well, we can look into it some more. I don't want to delay this any further.
We can talk about this further during the working group, but
sure.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative. Madam Secretary, thanks for coming today. We appreciate it. We will now be moving on to our next person, and we look forward to seeing you in the working groups.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the work you all do.
And if you could just bring with you, you said that you needed more money for elections. A recommendation on that would be great.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we have up next, Sue, is the Office of State Ethics here?
We'll be letting them in right now, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All set.
Okay, is Peter Lewandowski here?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. I was looking on my screen. I didn't see you anywhere. Thank you very much for coming today. We really appreciate it. As you know, we're trying something new. We're going to go directly into questions after you introduce your team. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes and introducing the members of your team that you brought with you.
Sure. Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, and Representative France, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for this opportunity to discuss the budget for the Office of State Ethics. My name is Peter Lewandowski. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of State Ethics. With me is Nancy Nicolescu, who is our Director of Education and Communications, and also Shauna Kang, who's the Associate Fiscal Administrative Officer, and who has worked with me on the submission of our agency's budget. I've submitted a written testimony, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much. So I'll start off with a couple of questions. You have 16 full-time positions. Are all those positions filled?
No, we currently have 14 filled and 2 vacancies out of that.
And are you in the process of hiring them?
Yes, we are commencing a process to hire 1 out of the 2 vacant. Specifically, we need a legal investigator. And we would like to have a seamless transition. One of my, the current legal investigator we have, we anticipate that he will retire next year as part of the wave of retirements. Obviously, without a legal investigator, enforcement will essentially grind to a halt. So it's a critical position that we need to maintain.
Thank you very much for that. And I have a question revolving around quasi-publics. Do quasi-publics fit under your umbrella for issuing opinions on ethics?
Yes. Yes, we issue opinions to all quasi-publics when they come to us and request an opinion, both informal opinions issued by our staff attorneys, but also formal opinions issued by the full board, the Citizens Ethics Advisory Board.
Would that include opinions on contracts with that the quasi-public may make?
Yes, it depends. Obviously, if it involves a potential conflict involving a member of the board or an employee of quasi-public, we would address those conflicts in the opinions that you would issue.
Thank you very much. And Representative Walker.
Madam Chair, you always do you read my questions?
No, I don't.
That's okay. That's all right. But thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for coming before. I mean, the only other question that I would ask is, do you have, well, 2, do you have a lot of people that are retiring? Well, 16 of them. Do you have a lot that you're going to have to fill because of retirement? That's 1. And 2, did you receive any COVID dollars this past year?
Sure. So to answer your first question, we are a pretty young agency, or at least we consider ourselves young. So we only anticipate 1 retirement within the next fiscal year. And as I mentioned to Senator Austin, it's a legal investigator, so it's a critical position. To your second question about COVID dollars, no, we have not received any COVID funds.
Okay, thank you. Going back to what Senator Austin asked about the quasi-public, you said you would investigate contracts, and I didn't get the other part of those. I'm sorry.
Well, contracts related to conflicts of interest. So if, for example, someone is or was engaged in contracting on behalf of a quasi-public, and this individual would have some form of a conflict, we would address those conflicts with respect to contracting by way of advisory opinion.
How would you, I know, well, I asked all my questions. I'll come back to ask that one. Thank you, sir. Thank
Sure.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You might as well go for that next question, Representative Walker. I don't have anybody else in the queue. I remind people to put your hands up in case you have questions of Mr. Lewandowski.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. So if, let's say somebody was concerned about a contract that one of our quasi-publics had engaged in, how would one file a request or an investigation? How would someone do that?
Well, if we're talking about past conduct, obviously our enforcement division would step in and investigate whether there are some violations of the ethics codes. How they would proceed is if a formal complaint is filed by someone with our office, they would initiate a preliminary investigation and proceed with probable cause hearing. Of course, all these elements of an enforcement proceeding would be confidential up until probable cause is established. So folks can obviously submit a formal complaint. There's another way that our enforcement division may proceed is by obtaining anonymous information from anonymous sources or submission of various information that will rise to the level of initiation of a complaint by our own staff and proceed with the same steps going into probable cause hearing, and then once probable cause is established, a full-blown board hearing before our Citizens Ethics Advisory Board. Again, all these, both the hearing, probable cause hearing, and the full board would be presided by a judge, trial referee. That's talking about past conduct. Now, prospective conduct, if we're talking about, can so-and-so take official action with respect to a contract, for example. At that point, we would definitely recommend seeking an advisory opinion, whether formal or informal. That would be issued by our staff attorneys in the legal division, or if someone wants to seek an opinion from our board, they can do so. There's a petition for a formal advisory opinion posted on our website. And we would probably, request some documents. Obviously, most opinions, best opinions are the ones where full facts are presented. I think that would be critical for us to issue one.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Minor is up next, followed by Representative Nolan.
Thank you. Good morning. So I think I got this right. Of the 16 people that are in the budget, two of them are currently vacant, or is one of them currently vacant and another one soon to be vacant?
We have 16 authorized. We have 2 vacancies. So we have currently 14 filled positions. The 2 vacancies, one of them we are seeking to fill, that's the legal investigator. We have another legal investigator currently on staff, but he's retiring this coming fiscal year. And we would like to, essentially in the past, prior to our consolidation in 2011, Office of State Ethics had 2 legal investigators. We lost one because of the cuts in 2011. So our current 1 legal investigator is essentially doing work for 2. He's very efficient, but again, it's a critical position that we would like to maintain and also reinforce with an additional legal investigator, hopefully with someone who has experience in forensic accounting and audit. You may know that the Office of State Ethics is authorized to conduct 40 audits of registered lobbyists per year. We can only do 10 right now. Again, that's because of the shortage of staffing. We would like to increase the number of audits we can conduct, and by hiring that additional legal investigator, that would be extremely helpful. So it would be kind of a dual role, both on the enforcement side, but also on the audit side. And help transition while we were going through the retirements, provide for a seamless transition and in terms of the services that the legal investigators provide to our enforcement division.
And so, just to be clear, in terms of our consideration of the budget, we should not be looking at one of those vacancies as an opportunity to reduce the budget because it's not currently filled. We should be looking to fund the total budget because of, for one thing, what you just told us, which was you're doing about a quarter of the audits for lobbyists.
Correct. That's exactly the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Nolan, who is the
My-
last one in the queue.
My question was kind of answered in regards to how many audits are your staff able to do throughout the year, and then the required number of staff in order to do those audits. And you said, if you can repeat, was it 40?
Yes, we are authorized by regulations to conduct 40 lobbyist audits per year. We can only do 10 right now. And in fact, the audits that are conducted right now are conducted by an attorney. And I think that's misallocation of resources. We have one enforcement attorney who is in charge of conducting these audits. Really, ideally, it will be better to have an investigator, someone with forensic accounting type of experience and possibly experience with financial fraud cases to conduct those audits. In the past, prior to 2011 consolidation period, we've had an accounts examiner who was fully responsible for that. Unfortunately, we had to scramble and do our best to do some type of audit, but again, it's minimal to what we can do fully or are authorized to do fully.
And other question would be, so is it just that one account examiner to be able to bring you up to the 40, or you need more personnel than that one person to do that?
I'm actually looking at the legal investigator that we're seeking to fill, that additional legal investigator position. I would probably seek to do type of a hybrid work where that legal investigator can conduct support enforcement activities within the office, but also help out with audits. So I think if we were to hire this one additional person, I think we would be in good shape to increase our audits dramatically. Obviously, we would seek someone who has that experience in forensic accounting and that type of background. But yeah, I would say that with that additional person, we would definitely be able to increase our audits.
Okay, and Chair, if I got one more question in just regards to
Please go ahead, sir.
Quasi-public. If someone was to want to look into the amount of complaints that might have come in regards to one of our quasi-public, how would they go about doing that?
Just the statistics as to how many complaints. Well, it is our practice. If we have any current pending complaints, we cannot comment on them because of the confidentiality requirements. I think we could provide you with statistics of disposed of cases in the past. But again, we would not be able to tell you against whom a complaint was filed. Those matters are confidential. Right now, I would not be able to tell you how many complaints with respect to quasi-publics are pending before our office, as again, that information is confidential up until probable cause in those cases is established.
Okay, and I meant more of quasi-public to the specific agency, not the person. If there was a complaint in regards to, I'm going to say the Port Authority, for example, is there an area that shows the complaints that have come in regards to some of the things that might have, or might have been going on with the organization?
No, that's not to say, again, our standard practice is not to confirm or deny existence of complaints up until probable cause is established. So there could be, there may not be. Again, the reason why is because otherwise, again, the ethics complaints can ruin careers, can ruin political careers as well. And I think we are the prudent way is to maintain that confidentiality and let the process go through and see whether I mean, obviously the process of established in terms of enforcing a matter up until probable cause is established, and then you know whether so-and-so violated the ethics code. So I cannot comment right now whether we have anything percolating in our office with respect to, for example, Connecticut Port Authority.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your information, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative. Are there any other questions for Mr. Lewandowski? We look forward to seeing you at the work session, sir. And I think that's it. I think that you presented enough information for us to digest over the next little bit, and maybe we'll only need one working session. We'll see you there.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Madam Administrator, are we ready for the Elections Enforcement Commission? Are they here already?
Ms. Murphy is. We will admit her now.
Do you want us to wait 5 minutes for them to come in? Or
that would be helpful, Madam Chair, because I know that she has some staff that are coming in with her.
okay, great. Well, everybody can stand down, recess for 5 minutes. We will be back at 10:57. Thank you.
Excuse me, Senator Minor.
I respond with some trepidation.
This is just a simple question. I had a commitment at work, and so I was 20 minutes late to the meeting. Did I miss anything, voting or anything like that?
No, this is strictly the hearing process for the committees that started at 10 o'clock. So
okay,
it's like we were doing last week, and it'll be the same way the rest of this week.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you.
My apologies, Madam Chair. I jumped the gun in my eye. It's actually elections enforcement we'll be hearing from next, and I don't see Mr. Brandy in here yet.
That's who we're waiting for, right? Elections Enforcement?
Yeah.
I believe he's in the waiting queue, Susan.
Oh, he is now. Okay, great. Let him in, please, Eddie.
Yep.
And Shannon, please.
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr.
Can you hear
Brandy,
us?
we are, we're waiting 2 more minutes before we start.
Sure. Is the volume okay? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
volume is fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Administrator, are we all set?
All set, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Executive Director, you are, thank you very much for coming today. I really appreciate it. As you know, we're trying something new this year by not having you read your testimony, but by just introducing your team and preparing for questions. So if you wouldn't mind introducing who you brought with you, and you are muted.
Oh, can you hear me okay now? There we go. Good morning, Senator Austin and committee. Today, as you know, I'm Michael Brandy, the Executive Director and General Counsel for the State Elections Enforcement Commission. Along with me today is Shannon Keefe, who is our Legal Compliance Director, and Shauna Kong, who is our Associate Fiscal Officer for the agency.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a couple of questions to begin with to start us off. And one, I noticed that you have 35 full-time equivalents. Are all your positions filled?
They are not right now. We actually have 5 vacancies right now. 2 are totally approved, and we're in the process of filling. 1 election officer and a fiscal officer. We're in the process of working on those right now. We also have another elections officer, an account examiner, and a clerk typist that we will be filling. We're looking forward to that in a few months. Unfortunately, we were a little delayed in hiring. Some of these are recent vacancies. Once we got through the election cycle, unfortunately, November and December, I was ill with COVID. So it delayed our processes a little bit, but we are looking to hire and fill all those approved and funded positions as soon as possible.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're doing better. Seems to have been a disease that has felled the number of people that we really count on. So I'm very happy to see that seems to me that you're hopefully fully recovered. I'm hoping. So so that's my questions on the staffing. In Representative Walker, are you back? Representative France. Me either. We can't hear you, Mike. Try it now.
Try the other way. Is that
There you
better?
go. Yep, that's better.
I love Zoom. Anyway, the question I had, welcome to here. Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Mr. Brandy, to Appropriations Committee.
Thank you.
First question I had is regarding the change in policy regarding investigations with the 1-year limit, your current funding and staffing. How has that change impacted your ability to complete investigations within that time limit, issue decisions, and continue to do the job of oversight that you have?
It's been difficult. The 1-year provision, and this year is really an anomaly with COVID because obviously I can't send my investigators into offices or actually knocking on doors as part of investigations because of COVID. So we've been limited this year to really trying to find different means to complete investigations and get cases resolved. We have lost a few cases to the timely 1-year provision, but we're doing our best to get through it and try to resolve cases as quickly as we can under the 1-year provision. This year, though, has been really difficult with COVID, though. That's been probably the primary, point of stopping investigations and stopping processes because we can't do our normal work with our investigators out there on the streets. And even interacting with town clerks and registrars in our normal course of our business, where we have offices closed and limited capacity and all of those features. So it's been a tough year for that. We feel a really good job this year, though, in trying to retire out a lot of cases, even in the midst of the kind of craziness of the 2020 election cycle. We had a combination of handling in this office Citizens Election Program, plus handling all of the election administration pieces and complaints that resulted from the 2020 election cycle.
Thank you for that update on the impact of that and understanding the challenges presented in the current environment and how you manage them. Second question, as we look forward a couple of years, I see your recent status of the fund from 2020 as of the end of 2020. Shows a balance of about $22 million in the available for, with about $21 million for grants. As we look forward at the gubernatorial cycle,
right.
I think the last cycle was somewhat of an anomaly with a large number of participating candidates through the primary season. Right. What do you see as the suitability or satisfactory amount for that for grants? Should we see a similar number of people participating in CEP as we did in the last primary cycle?
Thank you for the question. We're actually right on target right now. With the statutory deposits that we anticipate in the next 2 years, by the time we reach the actual grant cycle in 2022, the balance of the fund, again, we're getting right now around $12 to $13 million into the fund by statute per year. So we do anticipate having sufficient funds within the Citizens Election Fund to handle the statewide elections. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball to know how many candidates or who will participate, especially at the gubernatorial level, which are the largest grants. But this past cycle for the General Assembly, we handled over 300 grants. We're still seeing extremely high participation rates, and the success of the program is clear. And but we do think that as long as there's no further attempts to sweep or take money out of the fund, we'll be right on target for the 2022 election cycle.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Brandy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Executive Director, did you get any federal dollars in any form whatsoever to do any of the work that you were doing?
We did receive in the past year, along with the Secretary of State's office, some federal funds related to cybersecurity. So we did get some funding, very small amounts. I don't think it was more than about $20,000 or $30,000 that we received. That was used for assistance with some of our software and cybersecurity setups, and we were also looking for some additional training money out of those funds to support our staff in again, so many of these different cybersecurity threats that we all faced. State's Office of Federal Funds related to cybersecurity.
I'm not so. I think somebody was listening to you in your office, and it had a delay, and so you heard yourself at the end. So sorry about that. I don't think it was from us, but I think it was somebody just paying attention to what you were saying, which is probably a good thing in your office, because then they can double check what you say, make sure that you're saying the right thing.
Absolutely.
So if you could bring that amount to the working group on any federal dollars you got from whatever area you may have received those. That would be helpful. Does anybody have any other questions for the executive director? So I think you're getting off easy today. Maybe your written testimony that we got was answered all everybody's questions.
Great.
So I look forward to seeing you in the working group. Maybe some additional questions will come up there. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with us?
No, just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak today and answer your questions. And we are available at any time for any questions related to our budget or any of our substantive work. We had a really interesting 2020 year with the election cycle, and we look forward to actually doing a lot more education going forward to try to make sure that the public has its confidence restored in the election system, and to make sure that we provide the support and the data out there to confirm how hardworking our elections officials are statewide and what a great job they did.
So I would just say that all of us know that the 2020 year was a different election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us. So thank you very much, Executive Director. We really appreciate you coming today, and we'll see you at the working session. Maybe we'll only have one working session with you based on the fact that doesn't appear to be much concern amongst the members relative to your budget.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Administrator?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you?
A bit early.
I know we are. That's why I'm asking you. We have up next, hold on 1 minute. I think it's freedom of information.
That's correct.
So I think Ms. Murphy was here, was she not?
She is here. Yeah.
I am here.
Are you, Commissioner, are you ready to move forward, or do you need more of your staff here?
Absolutely.
You're
I'm ready to move if you are.
I'm ready. Thank you very much, Commissioner. It's very appreciative of you coming in. We're trying to do something a little bit different this time without you reading your statement to us, and we're wondering if you wouldn't mind introducing your staff.
Sure. First off, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Madam Chair, I'm Colleen Murphy, the Executive Director and General Counsel of the FOI Commission, and I believe I have one staff member zooming in, and that would be Mary Schwind, who is our Managing Director and Associate General Counsel, basically our deputy.
Well, she is here. I see her here. That's good. So I'm going to start off with a couple of questions, Executive Director. You have 16 positions that are relative to your agency. I'm wondering, are all of those positions filled?
We have one vacancy of those 16.
And is that position are you able to hire somebody? Have you been approved for the hiring of that particular person?
We have not sought approval for that. We just filled, we had 2 vacancies up until very recently, and we've just filled one of the 2, and we will be attempting to try to fill that second position. It is one that we will have to look at our budget really closely to see if we have within our available resources the ability to fill that position.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm wondering, did you receive any federal dollars in any form whatsoever for the last year with CARES Act or anything?
No.
Well, that makes it easy. And how many cases does the Freedom of Information Commission hear each year?
We had been averaging around 800 to 900. This year a little lower. It looks like we'll finish out in the 750 range potentially, but we had been on a pretty good roll of going upwards, toward the 900 figure.
And your staffing is at the level that allows you to handle that volume?
Yes, what we're trying to do right now is build up from the time of the consolidation where we had 23 and we went down all the way to 16 positions. And then I had to lay off 2 people on top of it because our funding was so severely cut. So we're just trying to build back up a little bit just to that number of 16 if we can.
All righty, that sounds good. I'm looking to see if any of my colleagues have any questions for the Freedom of Information Commission. Executive Director Murphy. People are shaking their head no. Is there any, is the funding that was the agency requested just exactly what the governor has recommended for you?
Yes, that is
well,
correct.
Essentially,
yes. Just adding in for the second year, the 57th payroll. That's the only difference.
Yeah, the 27th payroll pay
Yes.
period.
Yes, not 57th, yes.
I was a little confused for a second.
We don't want 57 payrolls, do we?
No, we don't. No, we don't. 27 is difficult enough. Representative Ferrara, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. You asked the Commissioner the question regarding how many FOIs they field per year. And when she answered, unfortunately, the sound on my computer kicked out and I didn't hear it. I was hoping she could repeat that. Or you.
Sure. What I answered was we're on target this year, we think, to have around 750. We had been, prior to this year, we had been fielding somewhere between 800 and 900 over the past several years. So that's kind of an estimate. And of course, we never have any control over that. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. And thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Representative. Are there any other questions for the Freedom of Information? So it doesn't look like I have any questions. Your written statement and your few words here today appear to have answered all our questions. So we'll see you at the working group, and I'm hoping maybe we only need to have you at one working group and move things right along. Thanks so much. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. My co-chair came on. We did ask about the federal funding. She didn't get any.
And retirements?
I didn't ask that question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Are there any retirements in your agency that?
We are just experiencing one now out of the 16 positions, and I anticipate anywhere between 1 to 5 additional retirements. So we are looking at potentially, for us, that would be about 1/3 of our staff.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And have you started looking at a plan to address this?
Yes, we're working on that now as the first one came in.
Okay, so would you bring that to the working group? That would be
sure.
Really, I don't know if anybody asked this, and I apologize. We've got too many Zooms. If I'm part of a quasi-public agency in Connecticut, am I subject to FOI just like everybody else?
Well, I wish that were a yes or no answer, but there are a number of ways that a quasi-public under current law could be subject to freedom of information. If we're unclear if the agency is, outright a public agency, we have a test that we employ that comes down from federal law, where we analyze whether the entity, quasi-public or some other constructs have come before us, is the functional equivalent. And we look at funding, it's 4-pronged test, funding. We look at the governmental function. What is it that the entity is performing? Is it a function that government would perform, but for the creation of this entity? Is there governmental regulation and government control? So those are the elements that we look at. So that's one way, but also, if an entity is created pursuant to statute, typically right there, you have the government function when we're applying that analysis. So, very often the answer then would be yes. There have been some instances where some quasi-public type entities have been created where the legislature had a provision in there that said this is not subject to freedom of information. So we couldn't even employ that test were the entity to come before us. The legislature could also choose to put in the statute, just to be clear, this entity is subject to the FOI Act. So, those are the ways that we get at it currently. There's no real yes or no answer, but, some definitely already are.
So
Connecticut Lottery Corporation, among others.
So in other words, if we don't identify it, the confusion kind of ends up in the courts, but we could qualify that in our statutes as we create the quasi. Okay.
You could.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Madam
Sure.
Chair.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions for the executive director? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming today. We'll look forward to seeing you at the working group, and hopefully we'll only have to go through your budget one time and we'll be able to move along.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
We will. Thank you so much. Madam Administrator?
The child advocate is not on yet, Madam Chair. She's not due to be on until noon.
So do we want to give her a call and ask her if she can come in early, or shall we take a break until noon?
I can try to reach her.
Why don't you try to reach her? We can just hold for a minute. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I was able to reach the Associate Child Advocate, Mickey Kramer, who is going to get in touch with Ms. Egan, and they will log on as soon as they can. So I will alert you when they are in the waiting room.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam Administrator.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Sarah. Madam Chair, Mickey and Sarah are here.
Hey, guys, thank you. Thank you for adjusting to your adjusting your schedule. I think Madam Chair will be right back. She may have just taken a brief break. So she will be right back.
I'm sorry. I was over picking up starting up the tea kettle. Sorry.
You don't get a tea break. No tea break.
I have to start the water boiling, so it won't really be a break right now. Thank you very much for coming, Sarah. And we have with us the Office of Child Advocate. If you want to introduce your staff, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Happy to be here with committee members today. My name is Sarah Egan, and I run the state's Office of the Child Advocate. And with me is Mickey Kramer, the longtime venerable Associate Child Advocate for the state.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mickey, for reaching out to Sarah. We're a little bit ahead of schedule now. We figured we'd give you an opportunity to see if you could come on early. And so your budget changes very little. Can you let us know, does the budget reflect what you need?
Well, as you said, Senator, our budget has been pretty consistent for the last several years. We are, I don't know, it's a tough question to answer. We certainly do everything we can with the staff that we have. It's a multidisciplinary staff to respond to the concerns that come to the office. I think it's fair to say that that yes, we are limited to some extent to how we respond to concerned callers because we have to do so within available appropriations. But we have always recognized the state that the fiscal concerns that the state has had, and we do everything we can to operate within the budget that we have and to do as much as we possibly can with the resources that that we do have. So, and we're prepared to continue to do that.
And how many staff do you have? Are you appropriated for?
So we have 7 staff. I did send in written testimony that just walks through what each staff does. If it'd be helpful, I can just walk through that quickly.
No, I just was looking at the sheer numbers. Are all your positions filled?
All of our positions are filled. So we have 7 full-time staff. And in my written testimony, I outlined sort of what our expectations are during the biennium. As the committee knows, many retirements are coming. So we do anticipate that our 2 most senior staff, including Ms. Kramer and our child fatality investigator, will both be leaving state service sometime in the next year. So those will be 2 significant positions for us. That being a very small office, we'll have to use our strategic thinking to figure out how to mitigate the holes that will leave for our office.
I'm sorry to hear that, that you have such talented people leaving. Up next is Representative France, followed by Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. I was just going to, address that one thing in your testimony where you did say you have two senior staff departing. I would, you are one deep in every area based on your testimony. How, I guess, where do you find this expertise to fill these positions? And what does that look like as you're the next year or so anticipating their retirements?
Well, that's a very good question. We are, first, let me say we are working as much as we actually have an office retreat scheduled for next week to talk about a work plan and a continued professional development plan internally to try to prepare as much as we can for the loss of these two senior staff, who I think have both been with our office for more than 20 years. So it's a considerable amount of institutional knowledge. And our child fatality investigator, Faith Voswinkle, is the only investigative resource for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the State's Child Fatality Review Panel. So we are preparing as much as we can on an internal level. Because of the size of our office, we're not in a position the way another big state agency might be to onboard folks before these two senior staff leave. Depending, not to get too much in the minutia, but depending on the timing of those departures, we may have, the remaining salary where hopefully we can bring Ms. Kramer, Ms. Voswinkle back on a day-to-day basis to support and to sort of tutor and share more institutional knowledge with whoever we do on board. But obviously replacing them was a time-consuming process as well. So what we're trying to do over this year is to prepare as much as we can internally and to continue to build the skills of remaining staff to take on at least the enough of those tasks so that we can ensure that we fulfill the statutory reporting obligations that we have, particularly around facility investigation and most extensively child fatality review.
Well, thank you. I know it's challenging, especially as you describe with an agency that doesn't have a lot of depth to that, making sure that turnover happens. And then I'm glad you're looking at alternatives to that should the retirements happen and then the hire happens after they're gone to try and bring back staff to do some kind of a turnover, to give them the lay of the land, as it were, to understand the challenges. Now, looking in your testimony, you've been leading this organization for 8 years. I guess it's a general question of what have you observed in trends, changes in the what your agency does, and dealing with the child fatality, the different agencies that you oversee in some of these investigations. Are you seeing positive trends in there, and where do you see work still needs to be done in some cases?
Well, that's a really important and a big question, right? So I just would say in response to that, Representative, that in some ways, because our office is so small, and I think that we do provide valuable information to the legislature, to the state, about how our state and local agencies serve the most vulnerable of children, but we're not a regulatory or enforcement agency. So the bulk of our advocacy really goes to how do we ensure transparency and accountability across all publicly funded services for vulnerable people? And I do think that we've had a lot of successes in that area, both as a state and with various agencies over the last decade. I'll give you one example that I referenced in our testimony. After OCA conducted a facility and a fatality investigation at our state-run children's psychiatric hospital, the Solnit Center, in 2018, the legislature had a hearing. We published a report with several investigations, made 2 recommendations for statutory changes, which were both passed. One was to remove the state's license exemption for that state-run hospital. That process is underway. And 2 is to create a mandate that there be a sort of a state clearinghouse for publishing critical safety and quality of care information about all state-run and state-licensed treatment facilities for children. Both of those bills passed, The work is a multi-year effort, but it's underway. And I see that's really where our work goes. We investigate a complaint or concern, we make recommendations to the state. How do we strengthen that safety net? So it's not reliant on small agencies like us to investigate concerns, but that we're building a transparent and accountable system for how do we serve our children. I also think one other example I'd point to, and some of it's laid out in our testimony, is the legislature asked us a couple of years ago, put in a new reporting mandate to report on conditions of confinement for incarcerated youth. That law passed in 2016, and for us to report out every 2 years, which we do, to the Children's Committee and to the Juvenile Justice Policy and Oversight Committee. And I think that those reports have led to collective stakeholder conversations about public safety, criminal justice reform, and what our youth need to improve and rehabilitate and return to our community. I'm proud of those conversations. I think they've been effective at continuing to move public policy. And it moves at the pace that it moves, right? But I do think that there's been progress. I think the last thing I'd say is one of the biggest areas I'd identify for continued growth is our need to improve how we deliver services to children with developmental disabilities and their families. We have significant holes in our health and mental health care system for this population, and they have been particularly hard hit by COVID, the most likely to be isolated, undereducated, not in school, and not receiving the services that they need on a day-to-day basis. And I think there's more room for the legislature to help lead the way on that and those improvements.
Very good. I appreciate the answer, and it certainly is positive outcomes for your what you've been able to do. It sounds like you've built good relationships with various agencies and identified some areas for work, and the legislature's been responsive, so that's good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hi, Sarah, and hi, Mickey. And Mickey, you're leaving? No, I know you've been there as long as I've known Child Advocate, and you've been part of that. You're muted, but you're muted.
Almost 23 years here.
Wow, that's amazing. And thank you for your service. I don't know how we're going to find anybody to fill your position. That in itself is going to be, I don't know how you're going to do that, Sarah, but I want to thank you too, because of the reports that you do. You bring out the history and the issues that are facing our kids that are institutionalized by the state and somehow get missed in a lot of the reviews and the operations. So there's got to be, I know you said your office is small, but with this wonderful world of technology and everything, everybody doesn't have to be in the office. So I know some of the cases that you're working on really could they could use an additional body or two. So, I would think that potentially adding at least one more investigator to your team, besides the other two people that you have to fill, would really help the state of Connecticut in many, many ways. And it would help us in it's not playing a gotcha. It's identifying things that a lot of people sometimes just don't see, and giving us a better picture of what goes on in a lot of it. You're sort of like an ombudsman in a sense that you provide that, but yet you're advocating not just for the kids, but for the families and everybody else that's involved. So I would really like to recommend that maybe we consider adding at least one investigator to your team, and they can do the work from home. As we all have learned, we can do a lot of work. Unfortunately, we probably do more work at home than we ever have, but I just would like to consider putting in at least one more investigator in there. And there were a couple of other thoughts that I think you run into, which is having the flexibility of some funding if there are circumstances with families and kids that you're running into where you can help a little bit in making transitions before you can get them signed up for state subsidies and things like that, because you do that. And I've seen that happen, and it really would make things probably for the families even more smooth. So consider that, and maybe we could talk about that in the working group. Okay.
I deeply appreciate that. And I do want to say, I agree with that, Representative Walker. And the Office of the Child, thank God she's not retiring too, but the Office of the Child Advocate has one facility investigator assigned. Her name is Heather Pansiera, and she is, I mean, tremendously gifted, an incredible asset to kids. And I will say that even during this time of COVID, I mean, a lot of our work can be done remotely, but not all of it, right? We have to be able to go where kids are. And Heather Pansiera is at the forefront of that, continuing to go into our prisons and our other institutions to meet one-on-one with kids across the table. And that work is incredibly valuable. And she's not here today, but I just wanted to share that.
Oh, I know Heather, and Heather has taken me to places that I'm glad she took me to, but it put a lot of heavy burden on my heart because of some of the things that we've seen happen with our kids in the state. So, I mean, I don't expect to get another Heather. I expect to get somebody else, but somebody else that can help Heather in her work too, because she does a fantastic job. So let's talk about that in the working group. I'd like to talk about those two entities, just because of the stuff that I've gone through with Heather and where she has taken me, where it would be helpful, where she's providing products for the kids that are institutionalized that nobody else is doing and things like that. Those have strong effects for the kids that we're serving. So thank you guys. And yeah, we're making progress. It may not be fast, but we're making progress. We're making a lot of progress. So
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Walker. Sarah, I have a couple of questions. I put in a bill this year relative to mental health amongst young people. In one of the areas that I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on it, seeing as we have a little bit of time here, relative to mental health. And I think that young people who leave school early, I don't believe we have the data to know why that's happening. And I think sometimes some people would like to see those kids just move along because they're usually the harder kids to deal with. Have you noticed any uptick in mental health concerns amongst young people and the availability of resources for families, both at the family level and at the child level, to deal with those particular issues?
So Senator Austin, you mean in general, sort of during the last year? Oh,
no, I just in general, just over the last few years, not relative to COVID. I think COVID had its own issues relative to mental health and may have exacerbated an already lacking system for mental health. And I was just wondering if you had any sort of views on that.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a couple of my thoughts, and then I'm going to ask if Mickey Kramer to respond, because she deals with a lot of the families that call whose kids have very complex needs. And if we're hearing from them, it's because they can't access what they need, right? I think Mickey and I are both of the opinion that over the last decade, Connecticut has done a lot of good work to improve its mental health service delivery for children. That does not mean that there are not gaps that remain. And I think across the board, our mental health system and folks in it would say that kids continue to present with increasingly acute needs. We continue to have crises in our emergency departments. I mean, that's an issue that we've talked about since I think I graduated from law school, 17 years ago, whenever that was. So that remains a concern, that we still have kids overstaying in the emergency departments because of unmet mental health needs. We still have a dearth of child psychiatry in the state. We have a promising model for child psychiatry consultation with pediatric offices, but it isn't maximized. We have certain populations of kids whose needs are particularly complex, one of them being, as I referenced before, children with developmental and intellectual disabilities. We have a big hole in our system for those kids, particularly kids with intellectual disability who also have mental health treatment needs. A lot of providers aren't equipped to serve those children. A lot of our hospitals are not equipped to take them in. That's one of the biggest holes we have, and those are the kids who are most likely to stay for weeks at a time in our emergency departments. But I want, give Mickey a chance to say what she thinks in response to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, and I'm glad it's, the conversation has expanded beyond kind of what COVID has kind of revealed about our system.
Yeah, thank you.
What COVID has done actually is just kind of revealed to us, where we already had gaps in systems and just kind of made that so much more obvious, right? But in fact, we are seeing more and more and more younger kids who are presenting with tremendous mood, anxiety disorders that we are, not getting to soon enough. And very often these kids are presenting in school with school anxiety and school issues. And so you're talking about kids, Senator Austin, that are leaving school early. Well, I mean, I think that there isn't a week that goes by where I don't get several calls from parents who had fairly typically developing kids and, kind of and they are beyond their thinking. Like, they've got 16-year-olds who are contemplating suicide. They've got kids who no longer want to go to school. And so anyway, one of the things that we have been talking about in this state for a really long time is making sure that kids have timely access to appropriate mental health services. And where are kids? Kids are in school. And boy, it would be great if we figured out in every community how to really either embed or have really strong relationships between the available community mental health and family support resources and the school systems. Schools can't be all things to all kids, and the mental health system can't be either. So anyway, those are things I think that there's such potential where we see it happening. Good things happen for kids and families. Kids are supported on a more continuous basis. And you see a decreased crisis focus. And again, Sarah said it, by the time we get, by the time people are calling us, the number of parents that I speak to who have actually lost confidence in their ability to safely parent their child. It's remarkable. And so part of it is like, what opportunities along the way did we miss? So I think there's great potential. And I would start with, looking at our the relationships between our community mental health systems and our school programs, starting from preschool.
Thank you for that, because I'm just seeing increasingly people who the family may be in crisis. So if the family is in crisis, it bleeds into the children. So the families may have a substance abuse issue. It may not be that. The family may have a financial issue that is creating stress on the family. The family may have just relationship issues that is bleeding into the children. And I'm just curious. I don't feel like we're doing I just feel like we're not doing enough. And I think that, I go back to when we closed the state hospitals and we did not really understand. I think that we understood. I think we ignored, but we did not do enough to provide the supports for those families and assumed that they would just get better. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. So I'm just trying to look sort of broadly at the umbrella of what we're doing, seeing what can we do. And I often think that until you have the data down, you're not going to have the ability to convince people that extra resources are necessary. So for example, I had the Sentencing Commission do a review of the number of people that were chronically mentally ill in the prison system. And they said 81% of female inmates are chronically mentally ill. Oftentimes they have children, and oftentimes those children have been directly impacted from their parental problems that are going on in that family structure. And I'm just trying to figure out where we are with that. So Sarah, you going to comment?
Yeah, well, one, and I appreciate your attention to the folks with mental health treatment needs in our prison system. And I think, we focus on young people up through age 21 who are incarcerated. And as you know, the vast majority of boys and almost all of the girls have a history of significant mental health treatment needs and a history of having been involved with DCF because of concerns of abuse and neglect. In fact, all of the minor girls who are in the adult prison system in our last audit, which we just published in November, all of them lived in families that had histories of abuse, neglect investigations with DCF, and all of the girls are identified as having chronic mental health treatment needs, right? And so I'm glad that I know JJPOC is really looking at that population and what we can and need to be doing differently for them. And I wanted to echo also Nikki's point, because as the committee is looking at, from an appropriations perspective, what to do, I think doubling down on this notion of helping, supporting, incentivizing school districts to know who their community partner agencies are and to have contracts with them to work with high need or offer services, including case management, care coordination, wraparound to high need children and their families, is something that we could do a lot more with, and maybe think about how to use the federal ESSER dollars for schools, which are looking to prioritize mental health of kids, to do more of that work. And I'll give you one dollars and cents example. I think that Clifford Beers in New Haven has a really innovative relationship with New Haven Public Schools, where they've been contracted for several years to do that kind of partnership work. That effort is funded philanthropically and by DCF. That's how they pay for that. And they offer case management and then wraparound services to children for, let's say, for about 12 months at the cost of about $9 per day. Their data tells us that involvement has been successful in reducing clinical symptoms of PTSD in children, in reducing chronic absenteeism, and an array of other improvements for children at a relatively low cost. By comparison, our office recently published an investigation of the use of police by Waterbury schools serving pre-K through grade 8 students, and found that over the course of a 6-month period of time in 2019, the school district called police more than 200 times for children between the ages of 4 and 13 to deal with behavioral health crises. About 90 of those children were then sent for short visits to their local emergency department. 36 of those children were arrested by law enforcement. Those interventions, which are not helpful long-term to the child and family, are very expensive, thousands of dollars for that one day of EMS, police, and ED response. So it's about moving and supporting districts to move away from that and to having more effective partnerships with their community-based providers to do the longer-term work with the child and family from a younger age. And I think we have some examples of successful innovations in Connecticut that we should look to sustain and scale.
So thank you for that. And I think that sometimes people, like, I live in a very rural area of the state. And I think sometimes people don't recognize the isolation that happens of people, even pre-COVID, because of the public transportation issues and other things that are out there. And when you have poor rural kids in areas of the state where there's very little access, I think sometimes because the population numbers are not that high, that people think that there's not some mental health issues that may or may not be going on. And I am hoping that people are paying attention, or at least I'm trying to force the issue on people paying attention to the fact that mental health is not a geographic issue. It is across all borders. And I think that we need to broaden, although there may be some different techniques that you have to use in areas where the services are not localized enough for someone to be able to attend. And I'm worried about some of the options that we choose for children in schooling when they're not neighborhood schools any longer. And if you are a poorer family, you might not attend after school anything because you need to take that bus ride home. So, well, thank you very much, Sarah. Are there any other questions for Sarah? Thank you for accommodating our being ahead of schedule. I really appreciate it. And Mickey, if you're looking for that 120 days, I think you'd get it, but that would just be me saying that. So, thank you very much. Any other questions from anybody? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
You too. And we are going to have the State Contracting Standards Board up next. I know everybody's been waiting with bated breath to talk to the State Contract Standards Board. They're probably one of the more important discussions today that we'll have. And I think that Mr. Fox, I think that you are the chair of the Contracting Standards Board. If you could introduce the people that you have with you, that would be great.
Great. Thank you, Senator Austin. We're happy to be here. I know we're getting on a little early. We're supposed to be joined by 5 board members. Bruce Buff, who's a retired procurement executive, Al Ilg, who's a retired town manager from town of Windsor, Robert Rinker, who's an former retired executive director of CSEA, Al Bertolini, who's a well-known Connecticut CPA, Lauren Gauthier, who's the newest member of our board from down in Groton. And also in attendance is our executive director, David Gay, who's our sole staff person and an extremely talented intern from the University of Connecticut, Jolina Nano, I think is supposed to be here as well. I'm not sure if they're all on yet, but that's who's supposed to be here. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. So there's been a little bit of press revolving around the State Contracting Standards Board lately. And I'm curious, your budget right now is for fiscal, the agency request was to go up to 304, and the administration kept you at 175 and 182, and it was 304 and 318 respectively. If the committee chooses to expand your budget with a 304 and 318, what would you essentially do with those dollars?
Well, we would try to fulfill the mission that the legislature envisioned for us. Right now, it's only because of the extremely active board that we have that we're able to do the work that we do. I mean, we are supposed to be a major source of advice and recommendations to both the executive branch and the legislature on procurement. We're supposed to train procurement officers and agents in the agencies. We do audits. One of the things we do manage to do because of our board is manage 1/3 of the state's agencies, audit them rather, not manage them, audit them every year. So we get through all the agencies over 3 years. But the audits that we do, because we don't have staff, while we're able to get a snapshot of what the agency says they're doing, we're not able to do the kind of follow-up and analysis with what those findings are, other than to just document what they've done. And what those audits show is an inability, mainly because of resources, for the agencies to actually follow the law. So, for example, there are some agencies that have a lot of resources for procurement, like the Department of Transportation. But obviously you have managing agencies like DAS that do a lot of work. But most agencies don't have full-time staff to do procurement and contracting. And most agencies find it very difficult to fill positions when they become vacant. And so what happens is they are able to spend money off their other expenses line. So we end up doing much more contracting for an agency to fulfill its mission than is necessarily advisable based upon cost or quality. When agencies do contract out, at the end of each contract, let's say a contract with is for 3 years. I'm talking about hiring consultants and personal services agreements. An agency is supposed to do a cost-effective analysis. It's actually mandated by the legislature, and OPM is supposed to oversee that with each agency to ask and answer the question, does it still make sense to use a consultant for this function, or should we be hiring somebody? Almost none of those get done. And if we had more staff, we would be able to manage that process. We're also, I'll stop in a minute. We did a study, as you know, in particular, around the use of personal services agreements and purchase of service agreements, and found that there's not nearly the amount of competitive bidding that should be going on, that is going on. And the legislature in 2019, I think in part because of our urging, passed a piece of legislation saying that every agency had to submit its procurement plans 3 years in advance. Is it going to competitively bid it? Is it going to seek a waiver? OPM was supposed to collect those, and the first report was due in January of 2020. OPM was supposed to issue a report. We were supposed to get a copy. I think things got delayed because of the pandemic. Some of that analysis is beginning to come online now with OPM. We have no staff that can actually go through that and really understand what's going on at the agency level and whether or not what they're doing makes sense. We do have one vacant position that's formally a position that was last filled, the chief procurement officer. And that person that filled that position left for 2017. And was it, David, 2017? Do I have the year right? Yes, March of 2017. We have not been authorized to fill that position, even though it exists. And so when we get these complaints that come in, so for example, the most recent one that people have heard about, well, there are two. One was from Dillon Stadium, and then more recently, we had the whole controversy at the Connecticut Port Authority, which we should have a chief procurement officer that helps to actually investigate what is going on there. What we do is we have board members like Bruce Buff and Lauren Gauthier that step up, and myself and others that take a look at these things. But it's not the way we should be doing business. We're supposed to train the procurement staff. I know DAS does a little bit of training, not nearly the amount of training that should be done. In our testimony we submitted to you on last week, we have a whole list. We have a data analysis working group chaired by Al Bertolini, and we have a whole list of things that if we had more resources, we would like to get at, and you can view it in the testimony. Some of them we'll get to even with our board members, but frankly, there is so much that we're not doing that the state actually intended to be done.
I think that we all agree with that, and we've attempted to put some real dollars into the Contract Standards Board almost every year that I've been here. So I think that that's something that we're still going to attempt to do. On what, there was one question on the Port Authority that came up, and that you didn't have the authority to look at the Port Authority. Does David, do you want to answer that, or Larry, which one of you would like to answer that question?
I'll take a crack at it. If under the Connecticut Port Authority's own statutes, when we got a complaint, we received several complaints, and one of the first things that we did is we looked at their statute itself. And in their statute, there's section 15-31B parentheses 15, which is unusual language, and basically it says, and the Connecticut Port Authority is mostly about running the state pier down in New London. There are it supports all of the maritime ports in Connecticut, but really that's its major enterprise is the state pier in New London. And there's a section there that says that I'm looking at it, that they shall have the authority to acquire, lease, purchase, own, manage, hold, and dispose of real property and lease, convey or deal in or enter into agreements necessary or incidental to carrying out the purposes of that section, provided that those transactions shall not be subject to approval, review, or regulation by any state agency pursuant to Title 4B or any other provision of the general statutes. Now, David actually discovered this right away. And I mean, it could be read extremely narrowly, or it could be read broadly. And we don't have a staff attorney. We go to the Attorney General, who tries to be very helpful to us. We immediately asked for a formal opinion and right after from the Attorney General, because we uncovered a number of things that we have questions about. And the Attorney General immediately, it was very high on his list. He arranged a meeting to discuss with us what our concern was, and we're hopeful that we'll get a formal response from the Attorney General. Depending upon what that response is, I suspect we would probably write a report about what we've found so far regardless, but there is much more investigation. So for example, we're entitled by statute, if we have the authority, we're entitled by statute to everything that the Port Authority has, even things that would otherwise be redacted under FOI. We're entitled to it. We got a copy of a concession agreement that they did with Gateway. They've been cooperative, but out of, I think there were 18 pages or something in it, 14 pages were redacted. And so we really can't tell what's going on. And before we say we'd like all the information, we want to know whether we actually have the authority, because frankly, we should not operate outside our authority. That's core to our mission, is being true to the authority that the legislature wants. So we're waiting for a response from the Attorney General. There's also a very unusual, it's been written up, what they call the success fee on this arrangement with Seabury, which we've actually never seen before, but we'd like to know more about that. But we want to make sure we have the authority to look at those things.
So, well, thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure that we were going to clear that up, or at least get it on the record. I have Representative Datham, who has a couple of questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you very much for your testimony. I don't have a copy of your testimony. Did you submit it to Sue Keene, the administrator?
Yes, I think she got it either early Friday or late Thursday of last week.
Okay. We may want to double check with her because I don't know if she actually has that. So I'm a CPA by trade. I don't know if you remember talking to me in 2019.
I do.
Yeah, great. I'm a CPA by trade, and I look at your agency, from my former hat from public accounting as a really a good compliance system. And I see that, as a government, we should be leveraging off your agency to ensure that one, things are being procured either by DAS and just kind of a checks and balances, if you will. Again, I'm just concerned about taxpayer dollars. I want to make sure that we are, getting the best deal with our procurement contracts. I want to ensure that we have agreement around agencies to make sure that they are buying things in the appropriate bulk, if you will, and following protocols. So I'm a little concerned that just with my sort of public accounting hat on, that doesn't sound like it's happening. And so I'm going to be looking at more at your testimony when it gets into the system, and kind of also, I would love to hear from DAS how they are ensuring that, across our agencies that we are procuring things. I did meet with the Commissioner Josh Duvall a couple of years ago, right after our appropriations, and he was working on doing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing this. But I actually see that if we are doing this appropriately and there are checks and balances, we can potentially be saving our state government quite a bit of money. But I would love for you to be able to come to the working group and, if you haven't already in your testimony, provide examples of where contracts you've looked at where you have maybe concerns that we are not following procurement procedures, or if we are missing opportunities to save money, and would love to get some tangible examples so that we can kind of nail down how to do that. And then also, do you know if DAS has a procurement officer like you have been trying to request for your agency, or is that just something separate?
No, DAS does have a procurement officer. She's, I think, going to retire in the next month or two. But DAS has a pretty robust, although I bet they would say they need more staff as well, procurement operation. And they do, operationally, they do a lot of the work to develop approved lists of contractors and pricing on a number of products. And what I would say is that it's sort of just quickly, by the way, we would love to participate in the working group. Just let us know and we will be there and we can answer a number of the questions that you raised there. But there is a natural tension. I've been the chair since the spring of 2018. And I was on the board before that. And I've come to appreciate that there is there's a natural and always will be a natural tension between our board and OPM and DAS. And
well, that's kind of the nature of the relationship as well. I mean, it's
that's right.
So that doesn't concern me. And no,
I think it makes a difference when it comes to funding.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to, I had a very good meeting with the commissioner, and, he walked me through their process, and this was a couple of years ago. So I need to kind of pull up my notes and double check everything. But I do see, your agency is a good opportunity for us just to ensure that we are in kind of operating in a good checks and balances. And I do think it would be very cost effective. I know I sponsored a bill in 2019 that actually allowed that if there was someone within an agency found cost savings within the agency, that they would be able to receive sort of a 10% bonus, if you will, to incentivize people, the boots on the ground, to make sure that they are realizing cost efficiencies. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us. It's very common in the commercial world, and I think it would be great for us. And from what I understand, that there's not been a single bonus like this that's been paid out. So I would love to hear how that's going. I mean, I am going to talk to DAS about this, but I do see that, there is some great opportunity here. And I appreciate your work and looking forward to reading your report. And I probably will come with additional questions to the working group, but thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Representative. Got it. I got it. Thank you. Next up is Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Larry, for coming before us again. I don't know whether you recall our conversation that we had the last time we were all together in the building, but I'm going to certainly echo Representative Dathan's comments. I feel the same way that she does. And I apologize because I was on this and another meeting at the same time. So if I'm asking a question that someone else has already asked, I apologize in advance. But is there like an annual report that you file somewhere with someone that we can read on all of your discoveries?
David, David, you want to take it? I know we submit the audits that we perform. I know we issued a special report at the end of December or on Dillon Stadium with the CRDA that went to the different committees of cognizance. David, do you have more specifics on that?
Yes, David Gay for the record, Executive Director of the Board, sole employee. We filed the normal reports of the State Register and Manual and the digest of administrative reports. But in terms of doing a separate just report, no, we don't at this time. I wish we even had the time to be able to do such a report. We'd love to be able to tout all our successes. But we tend to do reports based on the particular issues or items before us at that moment in time, because they're the hottest thing that we're dealing with. And we try to dispose of those as judiciously and as expeditiously as we can.
But we can get to you and this subcommittee, for example, the Dillon Stadium report, if you haven't seen it yet, we made a number of recommendations that I think it would be important for the legislature to take a look at. As a quasi-public agency, that was sort of our first foray into looking at quasi-publics.
Yeah, well, I would certainly appreciate that. And to me, that would be a start for us to take a look at. I'm assuming that there's things there that are perhaps eye-opening.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Albert. Okay, well, I mean, that's kind of the road I think that Representative Dathan and I are going down. And, I know we had a similar discussion the last time that we were together in person. And, it's like, why can't we just stay on this track? So thank you very much for being here today. And thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Representative Wilson, and for all of you on the Contracting Standards Board, sole employee and board members and others, We really do want you to come to the working group. We would like an understanding of what you need in your budget to actually do the work that we have required you to do by the law that enacted you and by the rules and regulations that were ultimately done. And once the Attorney General gives you a opinion on the Port Authority, we would be very interested in that. If we have to clear up some language in the state statute, we would want to know that so that this quasi-public would be subject to the same requirements as anybody else. I don't see any other questions for you today, but I know that we will have specific questions revolving around budget and revolving around the rules that govern you and what we can do to assist you to get this done. And I think the two reports that most recently were done on Dillon Stadium and the few comments on the Port Authority are helpful for us to show people that these dollars are necessary in order for us to make sure that things are being done. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and I look forward to seeing you at the working group.
Thank you. We look forward to coming.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
For those of you who have a question about the testimony from the State Contracting Standards Board, it just went out to everybody. It had gone into public testimony, and so it's now been sent to all of you, so you can have that. So they did send it, and that's where we are right now.
So, Madam Chair, we continue to adapt our schedule a little bit, even though we are now scheduled for the Office of the Victim Advocate. I had asked for the Board of Firearms permit examiners to come on early. So
that sounds good to me.
That's who we have in the waiting room, right? I mean, who we've admitted. We've admitted Kyle Overturf, who is a board member, and Nancy Lotus, who is the staff member.
Thank you very much for coming today, Kyle and Nancy. Do you also have with you the chairman, Frank Londo?
No, he has a prior engagement this morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Nancy. So looking at the Board of Firearms, it looks to me like you asked for and almost received everything you need. Can you please let us know how the budget relative to your request and what the governor recommended is going to help you do what you need to do?
So hi, my name is Kyle Overturf. I'm the board secretary. I represent the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection on the board. And I think our budget looks like it's steady from the last couple of years. The vast majority of our budget goes to our personnel costs for our one full-time office manager and one part-time office staff. So I think a steady budget, or at least a consistent budget, will allow us to continue, doing the work we do.
And did you receive any federal dollars at all to complete your mission?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please raise your hand on this. We are ahead of schedule, so to speak, and I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions relative to the budget of the Board of Firearms permit examiners. Representative France.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming to each presentation to look at the governor's budget. We just have one question. The Fire Examining Board, what is the backlog currently, and what is the driver, I guess, most significant driving factor for that? Is there anything within the budget that you feel would resolve that in a timely manner?
So currently right now for denials from the local issuing authorities, the police departments, we have a backlog of 199 cases, which is about 18 months out. And for revocations, those are Connecticut pistol permits that were revoked, the vast majority of which by statute by the Department of Emergency Services and Public Safety from the Connecticut State Police. That number is at 671, which is approximately 30 months out. Prior to COVID, we had a 3-month wait for local denial. So we had really reduced our backlog quite a bit prior to COVID. We did have to cancel 7 hearings, but we were able to complete, I believe, 13 or 14 hearings in 2020. In January, we pivoted to virtual meetings. We have not canceled any for this year. COVID has obviously created the backlog. Between COVID and I am sure towns can back me on this, that the towns have seen a significant increase in pistol permit applications. So we're expecting pistol permits that are coming into the local authorities to increase if they already haven't, and we are expecting that number to create even more of a backlog, especially on our denial process. The board is all volunteer, so all 8 members. We have 8 members currently. The only vacancy is from judicial, and so the budget isn't so much an issue as it is just the number of cases we hear. Historically, we would hear 1 case a month. Once the backlog began, specifically after Sandy Hook, we doubled the number of cases to 20 or 24 per year, excuse me, including dates in which I would personally go up, look at cases that we have in queue, and do automatic denial days, cases that we knew couldn't have a Connecticut pistol permit based on statute, try and get those out of our backlog. So people who had hearings basis on suitability and that type of thing, try and get those up sooner than we did. And it was very effective, again, until COVID hit.
Well, thank you. Certainly that's a better story than it was not too distant past when there was a substantially longer backlog. So it sounds like the processes have improved. If you take out the COVID complicating factor of your, what your work you have to do. How long, I mean, not having a crystal ball on the number of potential new cases you're coming for, as we roll out of COVID and we realize you're able to come back to in-person over the next several months, whatever that timeline is, how long do you think it would be to resolve that backlog where you're back down to that 3-month or so time frame that you used to have?
So I've been on the board since 2009, and the last time we had this type of backlog was after Sandy Hook. The number of pistol permits and issues increased dramatically, which again, that created the backlog in which we started to go to 2 cases a month. And so it took us a couple of years to work that backlog down. Not only did we increase the number of hearings we had, we upped the number of cases we hear per month. So it's like you said, without seeing the number of cases we're going to hear in the future or see in the future, it's hard to guess what that backlog is going to be. We have had to reduce the number, we had to reduce the number of cases during COVID for this, health and safety of our board members and those in the hearing process. Instead of the 18 or 20 we were scheduling, we dropped that down to 6 or 8 just to keep the number of in-person people at the facility we hear our cases down to the 25 level. And then when the things began to get bad again in December and January is when we pivoted to the virtual hearings. So again, we're hearing about 6 to 8 to 10 of those a month. As soon as things get back to some type of normalcy, we'll go back to our 18 to 20 hearings, start to be able to look at our backlog and actually look at those cases and try and manage those in an appropriate manner to get that backlog down.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck as you transition back out to normal operations down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative France. Next up is Representative Datham.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for your testimony today. Just wanted to verify that I heard it right. You don't have any employees within your agency, is that right?
No, there are two. There's a full-time office manager and a part-time staff.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misheard. So can you bring to the working group the kind of a detail of the number of pistol registrations that we have, maybe for the budget period and actuals for fiscal year 19 through 21 that we have so far?
So
And
just to
how
be
many?
clear, they're not doing all pistol registrations. They're doing the review of those that are in one way or another.
Yeah, thrown out or whatever. There's problematic. Yeah. So I was hoping to get a schedule of those to see what the trends are.
Of the ones that are problematic or okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. So if we can do that, because I know you said you've upped it. And then if you can also let me know what the backlog is. And assuming that your 1.5 staff people kind of manage that paperwork and everything like that. Is that right?
Yes, our office manager can get you those numbers. Yeah.
Wonderful. You can just send it to the administrator. And I don't know if we're going to need to have a working group, but I think just was more out of curiosity. Thank you so much for your presentation today. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And are there any other questions for Mr. Overturf? Seeing none. Thank you both very much for coming, and we'll let you know if we need you to come to the working group. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Senator.
so much.
Good to see you, Senator Minor.
He was quiet today. I was expecting him to ask questions, but he's sitting there very comfy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Watching the snow fly.
Oh, snow.
Come here.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
So up next, we have the victim advocate coming. Is she here, Madam Administrator?
Yes, she is, Madam Chair.
Oh, I see Natasha there, Ms. Peer.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am well.
So thank you very much for coming today. Appreciate it. And do you have any other staff with you here today?
No, I do not.
Alrighty, that makes it very easy to. So I looked at your budget, and your budget appears to be essentially the same year over year. I think you asked for a little bit more than what the administration gave you. Can you tell us, will that adversely impact you? Are you able to live within what the administration set for your budget?
We always manage to live within what's allocated. The problem is, well, we don't know if it's a problem until it happens. Only about 30,000, between 20 to 30,000 of our budget is OE. The rest is all salary. So any increases that come in usually are immediately go to, or they're calculated by our finance person to accommodate any union negotiations for all my staff. I have 3 staff, they're all in unions. So when those changes happen, that's why we get increases. So like, for example, this year, we had 14,000 in OE based on whatever negotiations happened in the last year. And the only reason that's working is because we're all working from home now and using our personal resources to get things through, because our basics just to run the office is 16,000. So, I can say right now it's great and we'll manage it. But it limits what we can do. It definitely limits our outreach. And I can't, it limits our outreach and our flexibility. Basically, I'm pretty much one of the only people that works evenings, because to the union rules and having to reimburse, we just don't have extra money for that. So I cut that off pretty early in my. I couldn't predict how it would come out.
Well, thank you very much, Natasha. Are there any questions for the victim's advocate? Representative Walker, do you have any questions? I don't think so. Anybody have any questions for the victim's advocate? How many people do you see in a year?
We have right now 193 clients. Generally, we have about, it's a rolling thing because we're dealing with court cases, so things last forever. And then we also might get a client to come back when the law changes and the sentences change. So right now we have 193, but that could change tomorrow. Well, it won't change tomorrow because most things are still being held up.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, we appreciate it. We have your written testimony. We'll let you know if we need you to come back in. And we appreciate you accommodating our change in schedule today. And I don't see anybody with any questions, so you're free to go, ma'am.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for coming. Madam Administrator.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I've had to click too many things to get to you. Yes.
I know. I think that we have seen all of General Government A now.
Yes, we have.
So when are we signing back on for General Government B?
2:30, and we start with OPM.
Okay, everybody, and are we staying online? Are we recessing, or is there a different sign-in?
No, there's a different sign-in. So you're going to close this General Government A, and then we will convene anew at 2:30.
Okay, Senator Minor, do you have a question?
I may have an old schedule here that was sent to me, but I have OPM at 2 and then treasurer at 2:30.
You have an old schedule, sir.
Is that because I'm old?
No, it's just because you're
All right.
aged like a fine wine, sir.
We'll see you at 2:30.
Yes. So we'll see
Thank
everybody
you.
at 2:30. Representative Ferraro, you have a question, or are you just trying to?
No, thank you. I just looked at my schedule as well, and I don't have the 2:30 listed, so I don't have the Zoom link to get back in. Is it possible to have that sent?
No, you would, sir, I will double check, but you would have received the Zoom link based on the start time of 2:30.
Which I don't have on my schedule.
Gotcha. So I will be happy to forward that to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. So thank you for all your help this morning. We'll see you all at 2:30. Everybody gets 2 hours off. Thank you.